There's an African custom that says whenever we speak the name of our deceased ancestors and loved ones, they are brought back to life. We will do that today in the hope that you can do the same for them once we leave. Alright, so Nicholas Knight is buried here. Nicholas Knight was the son of Samuel Knight of Goshen and served in the 1st Regiment of the Orange County Militia. Smith was the first permanent English settler in Monroe. He lived in the small yellow house, now the headquarters of the Village of Monroe Historical Society. Village of Monroe historian Linda Burrows. I've heard of Edward Dipple. Okay, good. Edward Dipple was a 20-year-old New York City police officer from Monroe who lived with his wife and daughter. When the draft riots erupted in New York City in July 1863, middle of the Civil War, the Union needed manpower in order to be able to defeat the Confederacy. The riot occurred over military conscription, especially among the poor, who felt like they were being singled out, especially Irish immigrants. Officer Dipple was called to defend the home of an abolitionist in New York City, whose home and life had been threatened by the rioters. Right. Martin Knight was known as the King Bee of Monroe. That was a nickname given him in 1886. He was a very successful businessman who at one point owned 300 acres and 6 to 7 houses in the village. He was most famous for the hall that bore his name on North Main Street. Mr. Hall is the oldest surviving Civil War soldier living in Monroe and often led Memorial Day celebrations, originally known as Decoration Day, to honor Civil War veterans. Miss Amy Tote dedicated her life to serving others. Trained as a nurse, she volunteered her services to treat America's sailors who were serving in the U.S. Navy during World War I. While doing so at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York City, she contracted pneumonia, the same illness that many of the sailors had been exposed to. Carl T. Wilder, whose grave is here, was gunned down on the Tuxedo Greenwood Lake Road on Friday afternoon just outside Tuxedo Park, September 7, 1928. Upon discovery of his body next to his motorcycle, he was immediately taken to Tuxedo Memorial Hospital, where he died an hour later. He was never able to identify his assailant or assailants. Douglas Schuett was born in Newburgh and lived his whole life in Monroe. He was a Monroe High School graduate, which is now North Main Elementary School, where he excelled in basketball and golf. He worked as a mortician in Mount Vernon after completing an educational training program. He was a local hero during World War II. He volunteered and was trained as a paratrooper, where he participated in the invasion of Sicily in 1943 and the invasion of Holland in 1944, where he was wounded. After hospitalization in England, Staff Sergeant Schuett served in the 32nd Airborne Division, which attacked the German army at Cheneux in December of 1944. His division withstood numerous counterattacks, and for his efforts he was awarded a Purple Heart and an Oak Leaf Cluster. He died overseas. Upon his death in battle, his body was sent to Monroe, where he received the hero's welcome. And we have pictures of the funeral when the armed forces came and organized his funeral. Alfred J. Crane was one of the original 8 members of the Monroe Improvement Association, an organization of local businessmen whose goal it was to plan a central park for the village of Monroe in order to make it the prettiest village on the Erie Railroad. For Dr. Thomas T. Mitchell Bundren, an African-American Columbia University graduate and professor of oral surgery, dentistry for 39 years. Dr. Bundren went to Monroe schools and died at his home in Monroe. He was 72 years old. In addition to his skills as a dentist and educator, he served on many civic and benevolent associations in the area.